On the first day of Christmas, namely 90s gave to me a Xena warrior princess.
Wow. Bravo.
Thank you.
Welcome to Namely 90s. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right. You're listening to Namely 90s. Thanks for joining us. You are tuned in to the first episode of our 12 Days of Christmas special. As usual, I'm Andrew. Over there is Brandon.
That's me.
And we can be found online at namely90s.com or on Twitter at namely90s with a 90s. And Brandon is going to take it over and introduce our very first guest for this holiday special.
Yeah, merry happy everyone. It's the first day of the 12 Days of Christmas specials, and today, to kick off our rotating panel of guests, I guess it's not rotating so much as revolving, we have Jen from Oof, Right in the Childhood, a podcast that is one part history, one part social justice, and one part humor. Mix that together, and you got Jen from Oof, Right in the Childhood. Do you want to tell us or tell our listeners about your podcast?
Absolutely. I am so happy to be here with y'all today. I host Oof, Right in the Childhood, and it actually started when my cousin gave me Disney Plus for quarantine. I didn't know we were giving quarantine gifts, but they gave me Disney Plus, and I was like, it'd be fun. I should watch all of the original Disney movies in order and post a reaction thread to my Facebook. And as I started watching them, I was like, oh no, I have forgotten how bad some stuff is. And so I started going oof a lot. And then people said I was funny. So now I have a podcast where I tell you the history of how a Disney movie was made, and usually the history of the source work behind it. And then I watch the movie and I write a script as I watch it with my live reactions to how that movie is going. And at least once every episode, I go, oof, right in the childhood, because oh my goodness, there's some bad stuff out there.
Oh yeah. And you're starting chronologically. So it's over 50 years old at this point. And
oh my goodness.
It's
the worst one so far was Peter Pan so far. My husband came home that day and he's like, hey, what movie did you watch? I was like, Peter Pan. He went, oh no, that didn't go the way you wanted, did it? And I'm like, I didn't remember that movie at all.
So I recently replayed all of Kingdom Hearts, and they did a level on Peter Pan, and I was just like, okay, this is slightly not good in terms of the Lost Boys and the
pretty much nothing aged well, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I am
it's just
not
gonna get
looking
worse.
forward to Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is just like racial slurs left and right. So at least I have a little while before I get there.
That's true. There's a bit of a grace period. I think the first episode I listened to was the episode on the Donald Duck one with the two other birds.
The Three Caballeros.
Three Caballeros, yes. Because I had watched it earlier in quarantine with my now ex-girlfriend, and I liked the subtitle that not as racist, but creepy men.
Less racism, more creepy men.
That's what it was.
It's possibly the least racist of the early Disney movies, but then there's Donald Duck, who gets really angry because some girls don't want to make out with him. So
yeah, I mean that's a recurring theme. Like guys that are or ducks that are kind of rapey. Like it's bad. They're really aggressive in a lot of these things. I don't like it.
They bring war on a beach of women in bathing suits because they're mad because they're won't get it on with them. And I'm like, this is what everyone wants for their children's anthropomorphic ducks.
Right. And like I had only thought to watch that because I had been watching the new DuckTales reboot, and they had an episode with the two other birds that came on, and I was like, I guess I should watch this original source material, and I was horrified at the
And then
beach
you went,
dog.
oh wait, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a kid's show. These kids now have Disney Plus. They're gonna go back and watch this too.
It's not all safe for kids necessarily. No. I had a question. You talk about in each of your episodes, you cover things like racism, sexism, classism. I know people know what those things are. Another one that people may not be as familiar with is ableism. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So ableism is the assumption that only healthy people are good. Only able-bodied people are good. You see a lot of ableism in Dumbo, where Dumbo doesn't have a name within the movie itself. Mrs. Jumbo, who also doesn't have a name, by the way, has decided to name him Jumbo Jr. until his ears are so large that he can't walk properly. And they decide to name him Dumbo because his ears make him look dumb.
Right.
So you have two animals there, or two main characters that don't have names. They don't have agency of their own. And one of them is called an ableist nickname throughout the entire movie.
Wow.
Until he gets drunk, and then everything gets better after that. So, lessons for kids.
Yeah, perfect. No, I found that particularly interesting as a disabled person. I just thought it'd be worth mentioning because that's one that people don't really, there's a lot of isms, and that's one that doesn't get a whole lot of coverage, so I thought it was important we mentioned that.
Yeah, I have a mobility disorder, and so I walk with a cane, and I do see the ableism in modern day society, and you don't see it a whole lot in Disney, but it definitely comes out, especially Pinocchio, Dumbo. They have some very upsetting moments.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not quite to the level of using a cane, but not too far off. So no, I'm with you. I have to answer a lot of questions about like, are you okay? It's like, I don't really want to explain it to everybody. So I'm just like, yep, I'm good. Thanks.
Or
you know what I mean?
The one that really gets you is why are you using the handicap?
Husband.
Sorry.
Sorry. I joke with my husband that I started using the cane about a year ago because it just hurts a lot. I have nerve damage in my leg. And once I got the cane, I was no longer being shoved out of the way in malls. And I could walk through crowds, and I was like, who knew? Now I'm visible.
That's very true. Yeah. The invisible disability, that's a hard one.
And if not, like my great grandmother or great aunts, you could always trip people with the cane.
Or whack them if they try to steal your purse or any variety of other things.
My grandmother had hearing aids that were on the back of her glasses, and my mom used to say that when she didn't like what people were saying, she would just scratch the back of her ear and turn down the speaker.
That's awesome.
Can I do that at work? No, I don't know.
I wish I could do that in real life.
Probably not.
I guess I could mix the levels right here. No. So I guess I forgot to ask what days does your podcast come out? And I think you might be on hiatus right now.
I am on hiatus for December. I had a lot of different medical appointments in November, and I was just starting to really struggle to get everything out. And I thought it's not fair to my listeners. It's not fair to my editor. So I decided to take a few weeks off and, catch up.
A little R&R.
I typically, starting back on January 11th, I will be releasing every Monday. January 11th will be Sword in the Stone. And then when I have guests on, they come on Thursdays and they discuss that movie. And we try to have discussions about topics around those things. So when we get around to, say, Pocahontas, I'm reaching out to some podcasters of color to come and discuss the treatment of brown women in Disney. And things like that.
That's another great thing about your podcast is your solo episodes that come out on Monday. they're like very informative. It's like being along the ride with you, experiencing the gut punches and the pows and oofs of the childhood. But then you also bring on guests when you're able to, and like really specifically focus on like topics that I wouldn't even have thought of had I not rewatched the movie recently, that are a part of those episodes. And it's really cool. It's not like supplemental. It's a cool integration of themes.
Yeah, when I started, that was one of the very first things I started doing. Was like, are you going to have guests? And I was kind of sat around and was like, I don't know how guests fit in to the format I have. And I felt like I'd be like shoehorning people in. And then I just kind of had this idea of like, why don't I just have a second episode that week if someone wants to come and talk to me about The Little Mermaid or Aladdin or something. And then we can actually have a full in-depth long discussion about it. And I don't have to try to fit someone in and make it not work.
Yeah,
it's so easy now. I mean, just like here, it's never been easier to record a podcast remotely with other people. We do it every week.
I just pop them into Discord and I'm like, here we go.
Nice. Discord. I was pushing Discord. We use it now to just play Rocket League with each other across platforms.
Hey, you know what?
I have a server that is just called Recording Studio, and I just boot that up and we're off to the races.
I like it.
Nice.
And where can people find you online, on social, etc.?
Well, all of my handles are Oof My Childhood, because that was the working title of the podcast, and it's way shorter. So I have oofmychildhood.com, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can search for Oof My Childhood, all one word. And you can also drop me an email at oofmychildhood@gmail.com if you want to talk about something.
Nice.
I like it.
All right. And then, since this is the first episode of our 12-day Christmas specials, we're now introducing the second half of the format. We're talking about holiday memories, but also 90s episodes, or holiday themed 90s episode. Wow, I can't even talk correctly.
It's okay.
90s episode. Wow. Holiday themed episodes of 90s television. I should just have my notes up in front of me. So on the first day, we're talking about Xena, a warrior princess, the season 2, episode 13, I believe, called A Solstice Carol.
Yes.
But I guess we should just toss it around first. What's everyone's memory of Xena, warrior princess?
Very limited. I really can't recall watching it in any amount other than today.
Really?
So, I mean, I was aware of it, right? But my wife actually wanted to watch it with me because she used to watch the show. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that people watched the show, but apparently they did.
Yeah.
No, my dad loved it. My mom hated it. So, like, every so often it would be on if she wasn't around. But my dad loved watching Xena Warrior Princess, and my mom was like, "It's not very Christian," and I'm like, "Well, of course it's not." I was raised in Oklahoma, super conservative. I've gotten away from a lot of that.
As long as you know it's not, just like, Christians can watch Harry Potter. It doesn't mean they're like wizards, it's, they're not to be burned at the stake or anything.
I mean, do you guys, does anyone remember?
You clearly don't remember when the Christians boycotted Harry Potter.
Right.
So.
Wow.
Do you remember that early 2000s Fox show Wife Swapped, where like the one promo I remember is there's this Bible Belt mom that got swapped, and she just yelled, "She is not Christian!" Like, really
I
crazy.
remember that. Yeah.
I think I've watched exactly one episode of that show, and
I've only seen the promos.
You think it is?
Yeah. Okay.
I
Yeah.
watched one. It's bad. I kind of said, I was like, why do people, there's no reward for doing this. This is just the reason you file for divorce.
Yeah.
That's it.
That was early era reality TV too. That was innovative at the time.
It was new. It was new back then. I will give them, someone had a creative idea that I'm sure I would love a retrospective on how many of those couples got divorced.
And speaking of divorces, I guess we could say spin-offs are kind of the TV version of it. Xena was a spin-off of Hercules, The Legendary Journeys.
I did not know that.
Starring Kevin Sorbo.
I did, but it's really funny. I've watched way less Hercules than I have Xena.
I feel like you either watched one or the other. I think I've seen more Hercules than Xena, which is a weird statement to make. But I might be confusing my Kevin Sorbo time with his time on Andromeda, but I do recall seeing him more often than Xena. But she was introduced as a villain in, I believe, season 3, and then she got her own show. Lucy Lawless got her own show,
and of course became the good guy, right?
Right.
Good
and
gal.
then both series were developed. I found this interesting. Were developed and produced by Sam Raimi of the Spider-Man film trilogy or the Evil Dead. Yeah.
The trilogy meaning the
first one.
The original trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. With Tobey Maguire.
What's his butt?
Yeah. I do think, I mean, there is a yearly reboot of Spider-Man, so it is hard to be small straight.
It's true.
I think Tom Holland's been Spider-Man for a whole 3 years or something. I'm worried. He's about to age right out.
I mean, he did die, spoilers, at one point, poofed out of existence.
But I feel like 6 to 7 million viewers for the first 3 seasons. That's really good.
Yeah,
still even by today's standards.
It peaked at 7.8 million on average for the second season.
Did people just watch a lot more TV back then? I feel like that's a really high number.
Yes, and B, she wore the least amount of clothing as anyone on TV at that time.
Fair enough.
Right.
I was joking with my husband with this one. I was like, I think Lucy Lawless wears way more clothes in this one episode than in the rest of the entire series put together.
Right? Yeah. Face covered, long dress. I didn't realize we were signing up for such a prudish version of Xena. But I just thought it was interesting that, oh wait, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. Back then, there were less networks to watch, and so this was in syndication, so it would make its way to more people's eyes.
Less shows on deep cable about people's ruined relationships for commercial profit.
Yeah, exactly.
Or aliens.
Yeah.
Or
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, were you telling me, Brandon, that you were watching the Science Channel and there was a ghost show on it?
Yeah. No. I think we bring this up later on, but I was driving to Oregon and I stopped over in a Northern California city and turned on the TV in the hotel and it was like, oh yeah, I guess I'll turn on the Science Channel. That should be entertaining.
Should be smart.
Yeah. And it was hour 3 of a 12-hour marathon of like ghost stories or something.
Oh my gosh.
And the weirdest thing is I had seen this exact episode before.
Oh no.
So I was like, am I in my own ghost story? Is this some sort of time warp right now? Yeah, I was, because halfway I left it on because there was nothing else to watch. And I was just like halfway through, I was like, wait, I remember the one about the babysitter doula that had like a creepy old couple watching her and the child was a toy mannequin or something.
Very scientific.
Yeah, super scientific.
Am I the only one that has specific shows that repeatedly you've only seen one episode of? Because like for me, for me, one in specific is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I've seen the one with the Loch Ness Monster in the school pool about 6 times. Like it seems like every time I've turned on Buffy the Vampire Slayer that it's on a rerun, it's that episode. I did finally watch the whole series through Netflix because I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was a kid because it had
witches, demons, and all that good stuff.
But she was fighting the demons. Though.
Yeah, that didn't matter.
Yeah, I guess she did.
I like that you
make
think
out
that
with
it mattered.
I guess she did have a relationship with 2 vampires. Yeah.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Yeah, watch it. You watch it.
Yeah. So I just finished my my rewatch of Buffy and Angel a week or 2 ago. So
we could go on for ages about the guy with the cheese.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Much to my wife's dismay.
The cheese
we were
guy.
talking about the cheese guy at length, and she's like, "What the hell are you guys talking about?" Like, she didn't like it. It was funny.
That's funny.
So shall we talk a little bit about the specific episode?
A Solstice Carol. Who wants to take the start at it? Why don't I just give you money and buy what you like? Xena said to Gabrielle.
That was absolutely my daughter. I saw it. I was like, oh, that's what my daughter says every Christmas.
That's I mean, in certain ways,
Christmas question.
Like, people just don't like giving money because it feels impersonal or whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. But it is a feasible method.
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword because no matter how good of a gift you give, giving them the money to buy exactly what they want will never be the exact same thing. So is the question, does such a mentality rule your Christmas or holiday gift buying?
Yeah, I'm really bad at buying stuff, so I get like I just can't do it. I'd rather just give them the money.
Be excited for Christmas Day. I sent you a very 90s, 90s gift to open up.
I like this point you made, which is I didn't realize we were doing A Christmas Carol. I should have realized it by the name. I was right there with you.
It took me either.
It took me about a quarter of the way through to realize it.
I think you on Twitter responded to a question about what's the best Christmas Carol adaptation, and then you said the episode, and I was like, oh, I guess I should have realized.
That's why I said, I'm not sure this is the best, but boy, is it an adaptation.
Boy, is it.
Sure is.
I like how the episode we bring you on for is not in stark contrast to what you do on your own podcast, because it's just like, wow, they went there with that.
They did that. We'll get to the end, but like I just kind of sat there and went at the end, just oh no. I was dying over Syntacles the whole time. I was just cackling every time they said Syntacles, and my daughter was like, "What?" I was like, "Syntacles, the former toy maker." And she's like, she just gave me this deadpan look of, why?
Awesome.
So my daughter is 17 years old, and she's at that phase of life where she's super into mythology, and she's very offended that they made this show in general.
I think we should all be a little offended.
I'm a little offended too.
I mean, they took a rough outline of Greek gods and mythology and whatnot, and
and the historical timeline seems ultra suspect, especially considering the end of the episode, which we'll get to later. So,
wait, are you both alluding to what I think you're?
I probably,
I would think so.
Because I was picking up on that. I guess we'll get to that later. But
we're not watching it for its historical accuracy, obviously.
That's true.
No,
that's true.
I was laughing about like guilty of singing Christmas carols and decorating a tree, off to the poorhouse with you. That makes no sense. Like, it doesn't make, you don't just send people to a poorhouse. That's not how punishment works.
If you can't pay your taxes to do your solstice carols and solstice tree.
But they're like, we'll die in the poorhouse. I'm like, again, okay.
I gotta say, I've completely forgotten about the warrior yell that every time
the ululating.
Yeah,
it's really bad.
Every time she jumps,
like, we really don't need that, do we?
It was amazing.
It's kind of offensive. I mean,
right?
like, okay, so in one of my former lives, I was an Arabic linguist with the U.S. military, and so I have spent a lot of time with Middle Eastern people, and they are super offended when white people ululate.
I know, that's what I said. I was like, is this not offensive somehow?
I'm going to apologize for my attempted ululate a moment ago.
Oh boy! If you're ever up to be host of Jeopardy, that's going to come back to bite you. Just saying.
But like, I was kind of struck. I was like, I forgot how hot Lucy Lawless was.
Right?
I mean, I remembered that she is hot. Mm-hmm. I forgot how hot she was, and I was like, oh, right, I forgot. This is every bisexual teenager's dream, right here.
this was
I'm going to sit
90s.
here and watch this show with you, Dad.
It was post. I mean, it was post Baywatch, but it was still riding on that early 90s scantily clad women on television is acceptable now thing.
Yeah, it like became permissible finally, so everyone was just going nuts with it.
But the great thing about it was that it was also very like girl power forward. Like
it was super feminist.
Yeah, and that pre-Buffy.
As feminist as
true.
What year was this?
93, 94.
Yeah, it's about as feminist as 93, 94 gets, really. I mean, a girl kicks a boy's ass. Whew.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. A girl kicks a boy's butt.
All of the violence was just
95, 96. I apologize.
It was just such tame
95.
violence, though. Like now shows are so like they literally show a guy getting beheaded and like blood spurting everywhere. Now it's like the kids throw a cream puff at them and they're like disabled for several minutes.
Santa throws a ball at their head.
Yeah,
and it knocks them out. Excuse me, Santacles.
It's good old fashioned violence that you can still show on TV, or you could show on TV back then.
I liked how they snuck the word ass into syndicated television.
I put that there too. Like
yes.
donkey is an excuse to say ass. They just said it all the time.
Yeah. It's like any show on FX after 9 p.m. They're like, we can use the F word. This is awesome. So they just use it excessively.
Should we focus on the Tobias storyline, which is the donkey that Gabrielle...
Who was that donkey?
Did she understand the donkey, or was this a Lassie situation is my question. Like, she was a farmer in the beginning.
I mean, Gabriella just kind of she was magic without being magic, I think, super lesbian, great magic, without ever being a lesbian.
I feel like
explicitly.
The donkey, when you get to the end, you realize the donkey's only there for the final scene. It really actually has no use in the episode other than it like suspends her from the roof.
But he makes her float.
Yeah,
but
and she also spent all of their money on the donkey.
Yeah, I suppose. I just feel like the donkey was kind of shoehorned in there for the
definitely the C story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the A story would be the Dickens-esque Christmas Carol storyline.
Yeah.
I wrote down that like they took the direct line from the first encounter of during the first fate. That's an exact line from A Christmas Carol.
I like that his bedroom was absolutely like 17th century British Christmas Carol in the middle of the zeros.
Medieval time. Yeah. And I'm just reading through the notes
medieval.
again.
That was like, it was supposed to be BCE.
Was it pre-medieval? Sorry. Well, the whole thing with the king though seemed sort of, it just bridges too many historical periods where it gets really, really confusing. But I'm reading this and I just love this because I'm just reading it verbatim. Third bullet point, the warrior yell. I think sixth bullet point. God, the warrior yell when she jumps, does it power her?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
I like how the kids stole her shop room just to like put on a Christmas tree. Like,
I know.
Okay.
The line, he's like, what else could it be other than an ornament?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a sharp metal object that you grabbed with your hands and somehow didn't cut your hand up.
That's a good point.
I mean, it's sharp, right? I think it's sharp.
It should be.
It should be. Yeah, I would imagine. But I have to say, the 90s like recap story intro thing, classic. As you know, I like a good 90s intro sequence of like candid video of the actor when their name shows up at the bottom, that whole cool thing.
I mean, it reminds me like Buffy does in every generation there is a slayer. She is the one who will yada yada yada.
But I took the liberty of looking it up because I heard the voiceover. I was like, this guy.
It sounded like epic voiceover guy.
This is the voiceover guy. His name's Al Chalk, and I believe he's actually voiced over an awful lot of things.
Oh.
And it's actually, I believe, like that's the person that Will Arnett is impersonating when he does the voiceovers, because he has like that sort of booming,
deep, gravelly voice.
Deep voice. And I just find that voiceover talent like very, very interesting. Like if you listen to the guy talk, normally it just sounds regular, but then it's like a craft, the way that he's able to change his voice. It's just really, really interesting. I looked it up before we got on the
air. I wish I was capable of that.
So
more shows should have that.
So they bought Tobias for 50 dinar, right? Or
yes.
was it 25?
35. They agreed to 35 eventually.
Which
Yeah.
was their entire wallet.
Yeah. So, but the fee or the fine for having a Christmas tree is 1,000 dinar.
Wow.
Which is, hold on, let me do that math. That's a lot.
Yeah.
You do better math than I am.
That's 28 and a half donkeys is what that is. And I don't know what a donkey's worth.
Yeah, what do you reckon a donkey's worth?
The donkey was worth 50 at the tannery.
True.
Here, I'm going to do a very important Google search. How much does a donkey cost?
Oh, I was doing it. You do it. Yay.
Anywhere from $500 to $2,000. So you're talking about a $60,000 fine potentially.
Oh my gosh. It's a friggin' Christmas tree. But also that Christmas tree that they found in the King's Palace, that was a fire hazard.
Yeah, seriously. That certainly was not up to fire code. Maybe had overhead sprinklers.
Speaking of the King's Palace, so as the episode moved forward, to trick the king, they decided we should make him experience the entire plot of A Christmas Carol, even though that did not exist in their universe. So they're just making this up as they go, I guess.
I guess.
But I questioned, is this not a world of magic? Like, couldn't they have used like some sort of glamour or something instead of using all the practical effects that they were doing to try to trick him into experiencing this?
Yeah.
I kept saying, how does he not see the rope?
I mean, it's dark. He's older. His vision's probably not great. I mean, that was my point too, though, is there is literally a rope.
Yeah. I guess the sleeping herb really helped from time to time. But yeah, I also thought, I mean, I picked an episode of Xena because I figured there'd be more warrioring than there was until that final moment when the guards came to the orphanage to square down against Xena, Gabriella, Centocles, and eventually the king. Am I skipping over? Does anyone have anything else before we get to that point?
Centocles is a dang coward. I kept wondering for the third fate if that was Lucy Lawless or if they just pitched her voice down digitally, because they could do that. It sounded so weird, that low voice.
The third fate?
I think it was the third fate.
The third
fate that she talked real low.
But the third fate was his wife.
Oh, okay. So it was the second one. The second.
Oh yeah, when she was
one of the fates, she had like a really low, weird voice, and I was like,
yeah, she was.
That?
I don't know. I think she was trying to sound very low.
And I think the whole like Centocles being
the origin
a coward or being claustrophobic is like so later he can overcome that when he goes down the chimney. It's like hoy vey.
Like, okay, so I was convinced that all the orphanage kids knew exactly what was going on because they had this perfectly set up choir that you wouldn't be doing if you didn't expect someone to be coming by. And then all of a sudden that kid's like, that's the king? And I was like, what did you think was happening here?
And then he was like, Xena, where do you come from?
Yeah, so they rehearsed for 9 weeks just because they were going to perform like for themselves.
In the middle of the night for themselves.
Standing in front of the Christmas tree in perfect little lines. It's like, oh, Xena, where'd you come from? I was like, oh, okay, so that kid needs some remediation is what he needs.
Oh, okay. And then of course, the person running this orphanage was the former queen that was estranged from the king that made him go crazy for 30 years and angry and bitter.
And then she's like,
she just,
I'm good.
Walked out and became an orphanarium person. I just called it an orphanarium like I'm in Futurama, but you know.
But and it's still like within the town walls. It's not like she went to a different town or city or got far away from this small kingdom. Just right outside his door.
Yeah. She's 3.5 blocks from the castle. Yeah, like just hanging out.
You would think, I guess he doesn't leave the castle for 30 years, but
probably.
Maybe.
You know, so like maybe his foot soldiers would be like, oh, hey, isn't that the queen?
Also, isn't there like literally no way he would be that old during that time period? He would have died at like, some very early age, and that would have been considered a full lifespan.
That's not necessarily true. That's not actually how that worked. The reason that the average lifespan from those days was so low was because so many infants died.
That's fair.
And so it's an average. So people lived to be 60, 70, 80 years old, but when you average that against people who are 2 days old, it drops it a bit.
Right. It's a good point, because here, like in the United States, the average age is somewhere, I don't know exactly where, but like statistically, once you reach 60 years old, you're statistically very likely to live until you're 90. So I guess that's a good point.
Yeah. So like, I think that I've heard that if you lived past your first year, you were more likely to live to be like 60, 70 years old.
Wow.
But because the infant mortality rates, and I figure I probably should have given a trigger warning for talking about infant death, but whatever. Oops. That's why we have like, they only lived to 35, but once you got past one, you were probably okay.
No, that's very enlightening. I never really considered it, but that's a very good point.
Today I learned.
Nice.
Ta-da!
See, and this is the kind of thing that watching
of useless information.
Hey, you know what? This is what happens when you watch a cheesy, terrible 90s show. You might actually learn something.
And if you want more information like that, you could find it on Oof, Right in the Childhood. With Jen.
I think the 101 Dalmatians has one of those useless factoids in it. I liked that one of the guards made a joke about being the queen of the Amazons. That made me laugh real hard.
After the king said, "I'm the king," and he's like, "Yeah, right."
Yeah, I'm the queen of the Amazons, and I was like,
what was more cringeworthy than the hula hoop scene?
The nunchuck scene.
Okay, that one's pretty good.
For me, it was I think all the Home Alone shenanigans that they were doing.
Like the whole scene is just terrible. But all of a sudden I was like, is he doing Greek nunchucks somehow? Is this just a thing in the 90s? Everyone has to do a nunchuck scene once a season.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's when you had like Walker, Texas Ranger doing all those like roundhouse kicks, and like that show Martial Law, which was super entertaining. Like everyone was kicking people in the face in the 90s.
I think Kung Fu: The Next Generation was still on at some point. David Carradine as
The Three Ninjas came out that time too.
The Three Ninjas. We haven't talked about that yet.
I feel
on the
like
podcast.
there were a lot of shows in the 90s that featured martial arts. It was definitely a very
I think it's a
big thing.
Yeah,
90s thing.
Stemming off of like the Karate Kid in the 80s.
Yeah.
Hilary Swank in The Next Karate Kid in 94. But
is that early? Wow, I forgot it was that early.
So at one point, I think the Santa Origins eventually got to me. I was like, ugh, I can't believe you're doing this.
Sickening.
It was so like it made my teeth hurt.
Well, like why? So I get they were like gradually turning him into Santa, which is always what they do. But then like they just never explained why all of a sudden he was in a red velvet suit.
No, right? They did. It's Gabriella's idea. She was like, or maybe it was his idea, but it was when they were talking and he was like, I don't want them to recognize me when I'm out there. And she's like, I have an idea for that.
Yeah, but okay, she says, I have an idea, and she puts a robe on him, and I was like, oh, okay, we're just doing robed Santa and I thought the beard was the thing that she had thought of. And then they're like, however, will we get in? And I was like, oh, I wonder, they go down the chimney. Like, it was very forced. And then he comes out the chimney and he's just in this velvet red suit, and I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
There's just nothing worse than watching someone inevitably gradually turning into Santa. It's just so bad.
Yeah, it has to be fast, like in the Santa Claus. Andrew, for reference, this is the point that I wrote down. I hate this so much. in my notes.
I wanted to know how they got a full-sized wooden horse down the chimney, because this was not Troy, and I have no idea how that horse happened.
Was that not a bag of holding?
I guess like that bag was not big enough for that horse, and that horse had a sharp implement on its head, would have busted up and it's too big for that chimney.
Yeah, I know. There's certainly some magic that has to happen there for that all to occur.
We talked about this before we even started the podcast, but so I wrote down with Xena's strength pulling. There was a horse on wheels. It was actually a unicorn because it had a little horn, much like mine.
Oh yeah, that's an amazing sweater. I want that.
It's the best. I had this before Kimmy Gibbler wore it on Fuller House. Just want to put that out there.
Wore it before it was cool.
Yeah, before Kimmy made it cool.
Kimmy's never made anything cool.
No, she hasn't. Yeah, so the wooden horse with a giant sharp horn on it being pulled towards her enemy. That's just. Were those nunchucks? That was the nunchuck guy. Okay, I thought those were swords. Like we had a very low res version.
It wasn't a nunchuck. It was like little heavy sacks on a cord. Is what it was. It was like 2 saps on a rope. Is what he was doing that with, and I was like, oh. Okay.
Ours was very low res and sped up to like 1.3 times speed. So they were moving very fast. It was hard to see what they were.
I watched at 0.82 speed, so it was the correct speed for me.
That's nice.
But I was like, those are nunchucks. I was waiting. I think we all discussed it. We all expected him to turn around just as that horn came through, right? Mm-hmm, and do the groin shot. I'm shocked that there wasn't a groin shot in this.
I think it just impaled,
it might have done something very sexual to him, is what it might have done.
Yeah, well, the thing is, either impaled that man or ruptured his rectum by pegging him.
But that whole thing is like, the whole show is like really tame violence, and then like the last thing is some guy gets impaled by a unicorn horn,
but only below the waist.
That escalated quickly.
Below the waist,
in a specific spot.
But I think this might have been the only episode of Xena where no one died. So,
but I do have to say, I'm looking at this note here
Go ahead.
Oh, good. No, you're fine.
I was about to read it. The actual end of the fight was just them pillow fighting.
Yes. Yes.
So bad.
After Dirty Harry references and nunchucks, they just had a pillow fight.
I wrote that down. It was a Dirty Harry reference. I was like, for a second there, I was like, did they reference that in Home Alone? And I'm like, no, that's the
whole
Dirty
thing
Harry.
is just for effect because it's simulating snowfall. Because at first I was like, really, a pillow fight? My wife's like, it's the snow. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, that made it better.
Yeah. But I just have to say, I said the exact same thing when the third fate came on. I was like, is that not just Palpatine? That's exactly
and not original trilogy Palpatine, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man Palpatine of the prequels and sequels. I'm sorry, Ian McDermott, you put on a little weight. I'm not fat shaming. I'm just saying you look different. So dirty pillow fight, snow. We're finally to
Palpatine.
The part, Palpatine. Yeah. We're finally to the part that we really wanted to talk about all the way at the start of this. As they're leaving town.
Before that, I was going to say, the king begs Amalia for her forgiveness. And I was like, no, you don't forgive him until he can give everyone their lives back. Like, I'm sure you're changed, but also there are dozens of people in prison and put in the you don't just be like, everything's fine now. That's not how world
He's like, will you forgive me? And she's like, okay.
I forgive you with all of my heart, I believe is what she said.
Love it. Yeah.
Don't do that. Moving on. Sorry. That was my feminist moment of like, don't forgive him.
I completely forgot.
That's crap.
I washed over that one in my mind. So the post credit scene, I guess, or no, the post episodes
credits. Like as they're finishing.
Yeah, as they're doing we are now leaving to the next town. It's Xena and Gabriella, and they're walking with Xena's horse. I don't know why
Tobias. I don't remember the horse's name. The horse has a name?
No, I'm just saying why is there only one horse? What would Gabriella not also need a steed, or do they just ride together?
That's a good point.
I mean, it's hinted at that they ride together.
Xena riding and Gabrielle just walking next to her because that's a normal thing that people do.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like it is designed like she's her page or something, but also partner and also lover. Anyway, they're just walking with a horse and a donkey, and then they stumble across a family with a newborn child, which kind of, to me, I don't know if you guys were picking up on this, but it looked like Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jeebus.
Yeah,
That
I think
baby
when the baby
glowed.
started, when the baby glowed at
Wait.
the end, it made it fairly obvious.
I did not notice the glowing. I guess I
Baby
was
glowed, and there were like big stars in the sky.
okay. I missed that very overt reference.
That was that's a very overt reference for like mainstream media, I feel like.
I was so proud of them, though. They made Joseph like a little brown. I was like, good job, 90s. You tried.
Yeah, he did look somewhat Jewish.
Everyone else was white, but Joseph was just a little brown.
Yeah.
and the baby was just completely glowing.
He was yellow,
Wait,
actually.
you mean
is what he
Jesus
was.
wasn't white? Hold on. No, just kidding.
I know. I wish. Well, they walked up and I was like, they're not good. They're not making. They.
I know.
This
They
is-
wouldn't. I was
They
like,
are-
what?
Oh my god.
I know. I was just like, this is just some random family, right? This is just a weird tag that they're being good about giving the donkey. Oh no, wow. This is. They did Santa. They did A Christmas Carol, and now they've done Jesus' birth as well.
Which is like completely out of order because it goes Jesus, Santa, Christmas Carol if we're going to go by historical references. But
That's a
I was
fair
like,
point.
Oh, I'm shocked I didn't hear about someone at church that was really upset about this.
Well, they wouldn't have watched it. How would they know?
Well, that's super valid. It's like you can't tell anyone that you saw someone in the liquor store because then you have to admit that you were in the liquor store.
I never thought about that.
No, it's because they sell booze in the grocery store
face
now.
that you just made was perfect. Just like, I've just seen into the world of the crazy.
You just wrinkled
Just
my
a bit.
brain.
That's funny.
Sorry.
Well,
No,
all in all,
it's good.
it was, as with a lot of these episodes, the things I've never seen, like I'm real just not into it when it starts. But by the end of it, I'm like, all right,
Yeah, I'll be honest. I picked this one because I thought it would be funny.
I really liked the very, very end, though, of like Xena taking that toy that meant so much to Gabriella and making sure she got it. And then Gabriella saying, oh, I didn't get you anything. She's like, Gabriella, you're all the gift I need. And I'm like,
that's nice.
Yeah.
It was so 90s.
It is so 90s. It was a very moment. And if
If it was a sitcom, they definitely would have played the laugh track.
Yeah, and then it would have ended with the da-da-da-da, or some sort of 3-note upbeat thing.
I now live in Canada. I grew up in Oklahoma in the U.S., but it's very sad for me when I say things to Canadians like, the more you know, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I'm so sad that you have missed out on this part of my culture.
Is that something on Space TV network?
But they get to reference things like house hippos, so
Yeah, not a clue.
No idea.
that's a hilarious thing I'll have to send you. It's very 90s.
We'll take it. And also,
You should totally do Canadian 90s commercials. I will find you a collection.
At some point, we're
send
going to
it
be
to us,
desperate
and
enough.
we will absolutely do that.
It
Yeah,
could be something on our Patreon. We make light of Canadian commercials.
we don't actually have a Patreon, but you know who does? I believe Jen.
I do. I do non-Disney children's movies on my Patreon. December, I did the Star Wars holiday special.
The original or the Lego one?
The original.
Ooh.
Yeah, I watched that. And I had this great idea to ask my patrons to suggest ideas, and I worry about my life choices when I do that. January, I'm doing the 1977 Hobbit cartoon.
Oh, I believe that's beloved, is it not?
It's really I just rewatched it obviously for the first time in 20 years, and the only thing is I was like, this is exactly the way I remember it, but I just kind of assumed that my brain deleted some of the parts of it for like important information. No, it just like goes from the Shire to Elrond to goblins to
Oh, you mean they didn't make it into a 4-part movie?
it's
series?
not 8 hours worth of story. They just kind of like snipped out all of the boring stuff for kids, but it was really good and has lots of nightmare fuel.
Nice.
Nightmare fuel. I like that term.
It is. The animation style is not my favorite personally. But so I think I think we've run a little long, but
Oh,
we
no,
did
right.
it.
we've done
We did it.
forever.
No worries.
Yeah, first
This is bonus
guest.
content.
How
Bonus content.
fun is that? But sadly, I have to say, that's it for this holiday edition of Namely 90s. Thank you to Jen from Oof, Right in the Childhood, for coming on. And
Yes, thank you.
can you let our listeners know where to find you again, Jen?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Oof My Childhood, or pop on oofmychildhood.com, or I'm on practically every podcatcher. If you don't find me on your favorite podcatchers, drop me an email. I'm going to submit my RSS. And you guys should come talk to me about your favorite Disney movie sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. That would be awesome.
Yeah, we'd love to come on. And as always, you can find us on Twitter at Namely90s with 90s, or find our personal accounts at bschwitty and at NamelyAndrew, and wish us a merry happy. You can also contact us through our website, namely90s.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, Tobias, Deezer, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts at. I'm Brandon. That's Andrew. Thank you one final time to our first guest of 12 on this holiday edition, 12 Days of Christmas specials, Namely 90s. Jen, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thanks again.
Thanks again for having me.
Yes, check out Oof Right in the Childhood on your local
Favorite podcasting platform.
that
right?
thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we will catch you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.